Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, today we have a very special bonus episode where we're looking at a brand new Netflix film from 2023. It's the action thriller Extraction 2. It's directed by Sam Hargrave. It stars Chris Hemsworth, Golshifteh Farahani, Bessa, Olga Kurylenko, Daniel Bernhardt, Tinatin, Dalakishvili, and Idris Elba. I butchered that one, I apologise. I'm Jesse. I'm here with this special bonus episode to talk about this brand new Netflix film. As always, we will spoil this film. We'll talk about bits and pieces from this film, and obviously this is a sequel, Extraction 2, so if you haven't seen the original Extraction film from 2020, go and check it out. I think it's sort of charting in all the Netflix charts across the world at the moment in anticipation of this film. But also, we did do an episode on that film not too long ago as well. So this film, the original, is fairly fresh in my mind. Give us a listen, search for that episode if you're keen to check out the first discussion on Extraction. But this one's all about the sequel from 2023. So we kick off with our Fast Flicks, which is a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one is about Rake. He's back, Tyler Rake, and he's got to break his ex-wife's sister out of prison along with her family and help them escape a world of crime. Probably not the best Fast Flicks, but it's the easiest way I could put what the gist of this film is all about, I guess, without giving too much away. So if you're keen on that one, hang around. We're going to talk a little bit about how this one ended up on Netflix. How did we end up with a sequel? I think that obviously we've got to talk about that this being based on the graphic novel called Dad, which is by Andy Parks, Joe Russo, Anthony Russo, Fernando Leon Gonzalez, and Eric Skillman. So obviously the Russo brothers are known for their work on the Marvel films, a couple of other Netflix films. I think they did The Grey Man as well, but they were heavily involved in the first one and this one as well. Obviously a sequel to the 2020 film of Extraction. It was in May of 2020, so not too long after or when the original Extraction was coming out. Joe Russo was hired to write the sequel with the intention of Sam Hargrave and Chris Hemsworth returning. And then it got to December of 2020, where the Russo brothers stated that beyond the sequel, they also hope to develop a series of films set within this world of Extraction to not only explore some of the characters that were in the first film, but sort of potentially launch this cinematic universe. And then I think it was in Jan of 2021, it was rumored that the Russo brothers were also working on this origin story for a character, Sarju, who was in the first film. But the filming for this one, Extraction 2, was meant to begin in Sydney in Australia in September of 2021, but as we've seen with a lot of films, we're sort of covering the 2020 films at the moment, but in Australia at that time, the COVID-19 pandemic was a little bit out of control, so they had to move production all the way to Prague in the Czech Republic. So it was in November of 2021 that Hargrave, the director, announced that principal photography had begun in the Czech Republic, and then Hemsworth announced that he'd begun to film his scenes from the start of December. They did some more shots in Vienna, in Austria, in January of 2022, and this went through till Feb, and then there were also some shots at Dunu City, which is in the vicinity of the DC Towers. Filming officially wrapped on the 6th of April 2022, and they did some reshoots in Prague in November of 2022 as well. In obviously Austria plays a big part in this film, and in Vienna there's this it's called the Donauplatte, which is this architectological modern area of the Austrian capital, and filming there actually went for 2 weeks, from the 1st of Feb to the 14th of Feb of 2022, and several businesses like a daycare centre, they all had to close down for this full 2 weeks. And the reason for this, especially with the daycare centre, was there was a lot of big action sequences that they didn't want to scare little kids, so that's fair enough too. This apparently is the biggest movie production in Austria since Mission Impossible 5. The big thing about this film is there's this one take, and I say that with inverted commas because it appears to be a one take. It's not quite a one take, but this one take action sequence during the first act of the film, it's 21 minutes long. And I'll probably talk a little bit about that a bit later on as well. This one had a tagline. The tagline for this one was "Prepare for the ride of your life." I mean, I don't mind it. It's nothing original, but yes, this is definitely a ride if you're along to watch this film. Across the world, in Spanish, this was called Rescue Mission 2. In French, it was called Tyler Rake 2, based on our main protagonist, Tyler Rake. In Czech, it was called Redemption 2. In Japanese, it's called Tyler Rake Reclaiming Life 2 in Russia. It's called Tyler Rake Rescue 2, and in Chinese it's called Rescue 2. So a couple of takes on including, very similar to the first film, Extraction, and how they translated across the world as well. As I mentioned, this one was filmed across Europe. It debuted or had a small theatrical run in America from the 13th of June 2023, and then it hit Netflix worldwide on the 16th of June 2023. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So, if we look at Rotten Tomatoes, this actually sits fresh at 75% on 89 reviews. This is only like 2 days since it's been released, but positive signs early on. The audience has it even higher at 90%. That's on more than 500 reviews, so again, positive. IMDb sits on a 7.3 out of 10 on over 19,000 ratings, and on Letterboxd, this is fairly high on Letterboxd too, a 3.4 out of 5 on nearly 18,000 ratings. So far, the consensus for this one's pretty good. What are my early thoughts, I guess? And for me, this was bonkers. This was bonkers fun. It's the type of action film that I think would probably be best on the biggest screen possible, with like surround sound, some popcorn, and just like 2 hours of not having to think about anything really other than being entertained. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good fun. So let's talk about some of the characters. Obviously, Tyler Rake, we've spoken about him in the first film. We know from the first film that, you know, he used to be a special forces soldier, and he chose to go to Afghanistan while his son was dying, and he wasn't actually present when his son died, and then his marriage fell apart, and he became a mercenary, and he feels guilty about all of this. So nothing new. They're the same sort of things that we saw in the first film, but what I liked about this one is that we do get a little bit of closure in regards to all of the above that I've just mentioned. So that's quite nice, and I'm not going to explain how it's exactly done, but I think that was quite good. We have some returning characters as well. We have Nick, who's sort of Drake's eyes in the sky, the voice in his head. She's the worker of magic. She's sort of like his organizer. And we do have her brother Yaz on the mission with them as well. Nick, she cares about Drake. But this big mission that they take, she wouldn't have taken this job if she knew it was so personal to Drake. And, you know, she cracks it at him because she thought, and obviously it's important to her, is the idea of trust. And Drake didn't tell her about this. So that's a little bit of a nice little take from her. Yaz, the brother, you know, we're not going to be seeing him again. Spoiler, apologies. But, yeah, I mean, that's the downside to one of these films, I guess. If you have a recurring character, there's every chance that they're not going to hang around. Then we talk a little bit about the bad guys, I guess. We've got these two brothers. David, who's this guy in jail. He's got this big gang. They deal with drugs, weapons, all that sort of stuff. And his gang help sort of him inside because they pay law enforcers to allow him to keep his family in jail with him, and almost like his kids and his wife are in jail with him. And I mean, it's a pretty bad character really. If you know, you're so selfish that you want your wife and your kids in jail with you to keep you company. And he's not very nice to his wife either, so not a very nice guy. And then on the outside, he's got a brother, Zurab, who, you know, he seems pretty gnarly himself. He's sort of devastated that, another spoiler, but David, he dies. He's killed by Drake, and, you know, he says that his quest now is to chase down Drake, and he says it's not about revenge, but that's literally what it is. You know, they do put this focus on him having hearing aids early on, which I sort of thought was good to see later on, where they use this scene where he takes him out to block the sounds, and then he can only hear the voice of his father, who is, you know, family is what he lives for. His brother, his dad. This is all an interesting insight into him as a character as well. Then we've sort of got, and I'm not really going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about David's wife and daughter, because the main focus, I guess, is on his son Sandro, who Drake obviously helps escape, and he's sort of got these. Well, I mean, if you've seen the first film too, he's almost like the kid in the first Extraction film too. You know, he's the character who's going to have to deal with either being loyal to his father and his gangster dad and his roots, or do the right thing by his mum and his sister. So, interesting little take there on some of the characters. The director, Sam Hargraves, you know, we've spoken about him before because he obviously directed the first film, but, you know, he's done stunt work on a lot of Marvel films, Avengers Infinity War, Endgame, Thor films. He helped out on Interceptor, which was another Hemsworth film that was a Netflix original that we covered as well on this show. He's got this film called Prophet in production, which I'm interested in learning a bit about. It's based on a comic book, and it's going to star my boy Jake Gyllenhaal. So that's another exciting one to look out for from Sam Hargraves. Time to talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that stood out? what are some ones that I probably didn't like? I mean, I like this film, so there's going to be more that I liked, but it's going to be hard to break them down because this film is literally about 2 huge action sequences which are done so well. But some other little bits and pieces. I think, to start off with, we sort of see Zurab, this bad guy with his big cronies all around him, his big crew, and the governor rocks up to talk to him and he's trying to bribe him into make sure, because his brother's been given extra sentence or extra time on his sentence, and he's trying to talk him out of it, and then he just turns around and gets a pitchfork and puts it through the governor's throat. I was not expecting that. That really shocked me. I thought that was a good start to sort of see what lengths this guy would go to as a character. Then we sort of see Drake's done his rehab and he's back sort of in this little hut in the middle of the snowy mountains of Austria, and this car rocks up and Idris Elba got out of the car. I did not know he was in this film. I was so excited. I was shocked. I was just like, Idris. I love Idris. I was so happy to see him get out of that car. This is the scene I spoke about, the 22-minute scene that everyone's talking about. I mean, for me, this scene sort of starts when the daughter, I think her name's Mia, she drops her squeaky toy on the floor, and then Drake just smashes it with his foot, and that's when everything sort of just lets loose. The electricity in the prison comes back on as he's trying to get this family out, and just like some of the best action I've seen in a while. We've got bombs, guns, shovels, snapping of fingers, fire on humans, cars, motorbikes, cars flipping, trains, tunnels and trains. Like, it was just such a big sequence. It was super cool. Really enjoyed that. And then the second big scene that I want to talk about too, it sort of starts off with Sandro sort of reflecting on this balcony in this big tall building with Drake, and sort of realizes he's done the wrong thing by calling his dad, calling his uncle, and he's done the wrong thing in calling his uncle, and Drake sort of says, "Kid, what did you do?" Which made me laugh. But then we get helicopters, choppers, we get car parks, cars, rocket launchers, big action sequences in gymnasiums where dumbbells are used as weapons. We got glass rooftops, we got swimming pools, all in this one building. That was a really cool action sequence as well. There was some nice emotional sort of bits. I really liked this moment where Kato, Drake's ex-wife, she comes back and she's there to see her sister, and he sort of goes on about being sorry that he wasn't there when their son was unwell, and he talks about how he should have been there, and she asks, why didn't he stay? Because we needed you, and his response was like, because he couldn't do it, he couldn't fix it. So this gave us a lot of insight into him as a character. He's really only, he's not up for things that he can't fix. He thinks he can fix everything. So I really like that. And then there's a follow-up to this at the end of the film too, where she goes to visit Drake when he's in prison and tells him that the son's last image of him was him going off to save people, not leaving him. And I thought that was really nice closure to that character that we've seen over 2 films now, that he's got that closure about his son, about his ex-wife, and now he's good to move on. The final thing I'll finish with, I think there's a final sort of action battle between Drake and I keep saying Tyler Rake, and Rake and Zurab, and Rake finishes him off, and they're both just sort of lying there, and there's this high angle shot looking at the 2 bodies sort of lying there, and then Rake says, he's like, I won't stop, and then he turns a gun and shoots it through Zurab's head. I thought that was pretty cool too. Alright, things I didn't like. I think that, obviously we understand that Tyler Rake is this character that at the end of the first film was pretty much down and out, but we get these 2 montages that I'm not sure were needed. One at the start of Rake going through rehab, and then this other one of him out in this little cottage in the middle of nowhere doing push-ups, chopping wood, moving rocks, just very cliche, and we just want to see Hemsworth doing manly stuff. I think there's a scene where Yaz is in the car. They're on the way to sort of support Tyler Rake in breaking out of prison, or not breaking, but helping him break people out of prison. And Yaz is in the car talking to his sister Nick about he's sweating and he might have low sugar levels because he saw it on TikTok. I was just like, what? That was the most random piece of dialogue. Was not expecting that at all. Alright, themes, ideas. What's this film trying to say? I think, it has quite a few little good things to say. I think the idea of fighting your way back, we see that Tyler Rake is, he's trying to find out what he's fighting for, and for him is that the idea of family or memory of what that was, and being able to change that trauma and that misinterpretation, or the interpretation of what it was to what it really is. I like that idea. I think we do see the idea too of adults failing kids, especially, we've got this really young kid, Sandro, who can be meshed into whatever he can be, but he shouldn't have to think that he has to grow up being hard. He shouldn't have to think that, he can't be emotional. He should have the ability to learn from his life, and he doesn't need to do exactly what his dad wants. He can be his own person. And in saying that too, I think the idea of revenge. Revenge is seen through this film, through, brothers, through family, through blood, through protection. And a little bit too, that there's this background of this idea of civil wars and wars. Like, these brothers wouldn't have been the criminals they were without the idea of war, and this idea of war enabling or turning people into people with a warped sense of what's right and what's wrong. And we do see in a scene too with the Bible, like the interpretation of faith possibly in the wrong way. So a couple of good things to take out of there. What did I take away from this film? I think I really enjoyed it in one of those moments where Rake's sort of sitting there in his little cottage watching TV, and there's an Australian rules football game, an AFL game on the TV during this retirement montage. And I mean, for him to be able to get, his favourite sport, his favourite team is the Bulldogs, they're on the screen playing against the Lions. It was just nice to see an Australian rules game in this big Hollywood blockbuster. But at times, like watching this film, it did feel like a video game. Not in a negative way, but there were so many sort of over-the-shot sort of point of view camera styles, especially in these big action sequences. It's not a negative thing, but it just did feel like a video game. A good video game at that. Questions, any ponderings? I think the question still remains about Rake. Is he a hero? He still causes a lot of chaos, a lot of death, a lot of destruction, a lot of pain. But he does the right thing of what he thinks is the right thing. Is he still a good guy? I'm not sure. I'd like to think, because it's Chris Hemsworth, he is a good guy. But yeah, it's an interesting question. And I do have a little bit of an observation, I guess, in that the end of this film, we have Idris Elba's character. I think he was unnamed in the film because Rake kept asking him, what's your name? I looked it up. I think in the credits he's credited as a character called Alcott. But Idris Elba, so he rocks up at the end of the film, and he gets Rake out of prison and offers him another job. And just based on Idris Elba, and he plays his character Luther. And if you've seen the Netflix original film Luther, which came out not that long ago, which is also on Netflix, the ending is almost exactly the same reverse, because Idris Elba's character of Luther in that film, he gets pulled out of prison and offered a job as well. I just couldn't believe the coincidence in this. It was almost like a reversal. It felt like I was in some warped world. So I thought that was an interesting little thing to see. All right, ready to wrap this up. So on this show, we give the film a rating out of 5. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think the 2 huge action sequences that I've mentioned, they're well worth your time just to get the thrill out of it. And Hemsworth's good. He proves that he can really do anything, I think. Especially, he is a good action hero. I think you need to give this film a go. I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Good score from me. I do apologise. I kept referring to Rake as Drake. Not sure why, but I apologise for that. We've got socials. We've got Twitter. We've got Instagram as well. Give us a like. Give us a follow if you can. Question I wanted to put up there is just realistically, is this better than the first Extraction film? For me, I think it is. I still enjoyed the first one, but I think this one's just steps it up a tiny little bit better. And based on what I'm reading, like as Hemsworth is doing the press tours for this, and based on the ending of this film, surely we're going to see a third one. And maybe they'll up the ante again, and it'll be even better. Especially if we find out who Idris Elba's boss is. I'm intrigued. Who's going to be that? It's got to be some sort of big casting. As always, we have an episode, comes out every Wednesday. We've got a back catalogue of almost 250 Netflix original films. If there's one they've put out, we may have talked about it. You may want to listen to us. So give us a listen. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you regularly on our Wednesday show.